Well, I can certainly define happiness because that's what I am. I mean, and if that I mean, I get to do what I like to do every single day of the year, and I get to do it with people I like. And I don't have to associate with anybody. Causes my stomach to churn. The only thing in my job I don't like, and this only happens about every 3 or 4 years, occasionally I have to fire somebody, and I don't like. That's the only thing. Other than I tap dance to work, and I get down there, and I think I'm supposed to lie on my back and paint the ceiling, or something like Michelangelo. I mean, that's the way I feel, and it doesn't diminish. It's tremendous fun. So, if they say that success is getting what you want and happiness is wanting what you get. Well, I don't know which one applies in this case, but I do know that I wouldn't be doing anything else. I mean, I do advise you, when you go out to work, go to work for an organization that you admire, people you admire, because it'll turn you on, and you ought to be happy where you are working. And I always worry about people who say, I'm going to do this for 10 years. I really don't like it very well, and then I'll do 10 more years of this. I mean, that's a little like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, not a very good idea. So get right in.
You would recommend that.
Get right into what you enjoy, and you'll be successful at it. You really will. I mean, you won't be able to miss. And that's. I don't regard what I do as the most important thing in the world at all, but it's right for me. I mean, I happen to be wired in a certain way that what I do works in this. If I had to do what Bill does, I mean, it lasts about 10 minutes, and that's true of a lot of things. But luckily, I kind of stumbled into the thing that I do best, and that it's worked out well. The best buys have been when the numbers almost tell you not to. I mean, because then you feel so strongly about the product, and not just the fact that you're getting a used cigar butt cheap, that it's compelling. I mean, I owned a windmill company at one time, and so windmills are cigar butts, believe me. And I bought it very cheap. I bought it at a third of working capital, and we made money out of it. But there's no repetitive money to be earned. I mean, there's a one-time profit in something like that, and it's just not. It's not the thing to be doing. I went through that phase. I mean, I bought streetcar companies and all kinds of things. But in terms of the qualitative, I probably understand the qualitative the moment I get the phone call. I mean, almost every business we've bought has taken 5 or 10 minutes, I mean, in terms of analysis. And we bought 2 businesses this year. General Re is, $18 billion or some deal. I've never been to their home office. I hope it's there. There could be just a few guys, and they say, "Well, what numbers shall we send Buffett this month?" I can see him, coming in once a month, and say, "Well, we'll just tell him we've got $20 billion in the bank this month instead of $18 billion or something." But I've never been there. And before I bought Executive Jet, which is fractional ownership of jets, and before I bought it, I'd never been there. I bought my family a quarter interest in the program 3 years earlier, and I'd seen the service and seen it develop well. And I got the numbers, but if you don't know enough to know about the business instantly, you won't know enough in a month or 2 months. I mean, you have to have sort of the background of understanding and knowing what you do understand and don't understand. And that is the key. It's defining what I call your circle of competence. And everybody's got a different circle of competence. The important thing is not how big the circle is. The important thing is staying inside the circle. And if that circle has only got 30 companies in it out of thousands on the big board, as long as you know which 30 they are, you're okay. And you should know those businesses well enough so that you don't need to do lots of work.
One of the things that amazes me is how people who really do perform well just sort of jump out at you once you're running a business. When I got out of school, I thought, everybody would behave that way, but they don't. Most people sort of go through life in a sleepwalk, and if you don't, you will stand out. So the biggest thing for your financial future is yourself. Now, beyond that, it is always being ahead of the game rather than getting behind the game. It's saving a little, no matter how you do it. I mean, I delivered papers, I worked at Penny's, I sold golf balls, I had a pinball machine around. I did a lot of things that enabled me to accumulate about $10,000 by the time I got out of school. 10,000 doesn't go as far now as it did then, but having anything so that you're ahead of the game and not getting behind the game is enormously important. I mean, just, if you're going to run a 100-yard dash against a bunch of people in life, if you can figure it out so that when the gun goes off, you're 10 or 15 yards ahead instead of 10 or 15 yards behind, it's going to make an enormous difference in how that race comes out. So having some net resources doesn't make much difference whether they're in stocks or bonds, in my view, but and not having debt when that gun goes off when you get out of school is a huge plus over being behind the game. And it may come from delivering a paper out in the morning. It may come from part-time work someplace, but put aside a few dollars for yourself, so that when the time comes and you enter the workforce, you're ahead of the game and not behind. And then once you get there, don't get behind by buying a whole lot of things that you figure you're going to pay for someday while you're paying 20% interest in between.
If you can change one thing in your life, what would it be and why?
My age. I never look back. I just don't. I don't worry about anything. I mean, so I consider myself unbelievably lucky. So the idea of saying I could have even been a little luckier if this or that had happened, I could have been a lot better looking, or I could have been a better athlete, or all that stuff. But so what? You play the hand you get. You play it as well as you can, and you're thankful if you're lucky enough. The odds were, when I was born, the odds were over 50-1 against me being born in the United States. I mean, I had a 2% probability. If I'd known that, I might have given up and not come out. I mean, but here it was. I was lucky enough to be born here, and I was lucky enough to have two terrific parents, and they raised the three kids in a way that helped me enormously in life. So, I mean, when you got all that going for, I just don't think you look back and think about anything that could be changed better. I'm thankful.
Isn't there at least one bridge hand you would have played differently?
Well, I have a partner who says I should have played every bridge hand differently. I asked her one time, I said, how should I play that hand? And she said, under an assumed name.
I bought my first stock when I was 11. I was at Rose Hill at the time, and I bought 3 shares of City Service Preferred at 38, and it went down to 27, which is something I still remember, even though I was 11 at the time. And then it went up to 40, and I sold it. I made $5 on my 3 shares after commissions, and then it went to 200 and something. So, I probably remember that a little better than if I'd been doing it on paper. And I fooled around doing a lot of things between about age 11 and 19 in the stock market. I did charts. I did all kinds of technical analysis. I read every book I could get on the subject. And I didn't do that well. I didn't do terrible, but I was really just floundering around. But that meant by the age of 19, when I read Ben Graham's book, I was at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, I went and bought this book called The Intelligent Investor. It just come out, and it had an enormous impact on me. Now, if I hadn't done, in the previous 8 years, if I hadn't been all over the lot, I'm not so sure that book would have had the same impact on me. I mean, by that time, I was prepared to read Ben Graham's book, which changed my life financially in an incredible way. I mean, I wouldn't be up here today if I hadn't read that book. But yeah, part of life is getting prepared so that when something does happen that's significant, you can grasp the significance of it and know what to do with it. And I would say that first 8 years of fooling around, even though it produced nothing financially to speak of, produced a lot in terms of getting my mind prepared for when I really did read something that made sense. So I was ready to accept it. And I actually went back and went to Columbia to study under Graham, and because of reading that book, and all kinds of things flowed out of it. So,
well, I think we both have quite a similar philosophy on that. I know in my own case that 99% plus will go back to society, and that'll actually count everything that my family and I have lived on during our entire lifetimes. But just because we've been treated extraordinarily well by society. You know, I'm lucky. Bill said if I was born a long time ago, I'd have been some animal's lunch. You know, I mean, I don't run very fast. You know, but I'm wired in a particular way that in a market economy, big capitalist economy, lots of action, I'm well adapted for that. I'm not adapted for pro football. I'm not adapted for violin playing. I happen to be in something that pays off huge in this society. And basically, I get the fun of playing around with that while I live, but it will all go back to society, and I think it'd be wrong to be otherwise. Frankly, if I'd been dropped down in some remote country or in almost any other place in the world, I wouldn't have been worth a damn. I mean, I am here because of a tremendous society that surrounds me, and the fact that I happen to be well adapted to a certain part of it, and so it's all going to go back to society. And I know Bill feels very similar. I like businesses I can understand. We'll start with that. That narrows it down about 90%. I mean, there's all kinds of things I don't understand, but fortunately, there's enough I do understand. And you got this big, wide world out there. Almost every company's publicly owned, so you got all American business practically available to you. Now, to start with, it doesn't make sense to go with things that you think you can understand, but you can understand some things. I can understand this. I mean, you can understand this. Anybody can understand this. I mean, this is a product that basically hasn't been changed much. They've added the cherry, but since 1886 or whatever it was, and it's a simple business. It's not an easy business. I don't want a business that's easy for competitors. So I want a business with a moat around it. I want a very valuable castle in the middle, and then I want the duke who's in charge of that castle to be honest and hardworking and able. And then I want a big moat around the castle. And that moat can be various things. The moat in a business like our auto insurance business at Geico is low cost. I mean, people have to buy auto insurance. So everybody's going to have one auto insurance policy per car, basically, or per driver. And I can't sell them 20, but they have to buy one. What are they going to buy it on? They're going to buy it based on service and cost. Most people will assume the service is fairly identical among companies or close enough. So they're going to do it on cost. So I got to be the low-cost producer. That's my moat. To the extent my costs get further lower than the other guy, I've thrown a couple of sharks into the moat. But all the time, if you've got a wonderful castle, there are people out there who are going to try and attack it and take it away from you. And I want a castle that I can understand, but I want a castle with a moat around it. Our managers of the businesses we run, I've got one message to them, which is to widen the moat. And we want to throw crocodiles and sharks and everything else, gators, I guess, into the moat to keep away competitors. And that comes about through service. It comes about through quality of product. It comes about through cost. It comes about sometimes through patents. It comes about through real estate location. So that's the business I'm looking for. Now, what kind of businesses am I going to find like that? Well, I'm going to find them in simple products, because I'm not going to be able to figure out what the moat's going to look like for Oracle or Lotus or Microsoft 10 years from now. I mean, Gates is the best businessman I've ever run into, and they've got a hell of a position, but I really don't know what that business is going to look like 10 years from now. And I certainly don't know what his competitors' businesses are going to look like 10 years from now. Now, I'll name one I don't own. I know what the chewing gum business is going to look like from 10 years from now. I mean, the internet is not going to change how we chew gum. And nothing much else is going to change how we chew gum. And then are there going to be lots of new products that really, our spearmint and juicy fruit and all those going to evaporate? So it isn't going to happen. You give me $1 billion and tell me to go in the chewing gum business and try and make a real dent in Wrigley's, I can't do it. And that's the way I think about business. I say to myself, give me $1 billion and how much can I hurt the guy? Give me $10 billion. Give me $10 billion and how much can I hurt Coca-Cola around the world? I can't do it. Well, those are good businesses. Now give me some money and tell me to hurt somebody in some other fields, and I can figure out how to do it. So I want a simple business, easy to understand, great economics now, honest and able management, and then I can see about, in a general way, where they're going to be 10 years from now. And if I can't see where they're going to be 10 years from now, I don't want to buy it. Basically, I don't want to buy any stock where if they close the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow for 5 years, I won't be happy owning it. I buy a farm, and I don't get a quote on it for 5 years, and I'm happy if the farm does okay. I buy an apartment house, don't get a quote on it for 5 years, I'm happy if the apartment house produces the returns that I expect. But people buy a stock and they look at the price the next morning and they decide whether they're doing well or not doing well. It's crazy, because they're buying a piece of a business. That's what Graham, the most fundamental part of what he taught me. You're not buying a stock, you're buying a part ownership in a business. You will do well if the business does well, and if you didn't pay a totally silly price. And that's what it's all about. And you ought to buy businesses you understand. Just like if you're buying farms, you ought to buy farms you understand. It's not complicated.